questions.
No sé.
So, 1 minute. Okay. Now we are under the cameras.
So this is a half-minute delay.
Smile again. They have the control room.
Okay.
Hey. Very good.
So I think that we could start. So thank you to everyone to coming. This is basically an online workshop. Now we have more than 108 users registered from all the world, from different companies. And the idea of this workshop is to introduce you about an European project called BASE, that we have 7 organizations working together in order to provide bathymetry data using satellite and crowdsourced sources. Then the workshop will be structured in 2 parts. In one part, we're going to introduce you the platform and the products. Then you will have, for this first part, 2 sections. A first section with a general introduction about what we are doing and what we are proposing. And then in the second section of this first part, Simon from FineMaps will show you how is our platform working in reality. Then in the second part of the workshop, we will be open discussion with questions from the audience online. You can use both the YouTube chat, or you can use as well emails as we provided information. So in any case that you can raise a question, just write it on the chat, and we will try to put these questions to the rest of the audience. Welcome, and let's go into start. Thank you.
So, good morning, everybody. I'm going to give you a presentation about what we're doing, the data we're generating, and also how you can get your hands on it. And it's very much concentrating on the data that you as an end user may want to see it, rather than the internal processing that's going on to generate it. But having said that, if you have any technical questions, feel free to ask them, and we'll respond to them afterwards, or if they get too technical, we might decide to do it afterwards on a one-to-one basis. So what I'm going to do very quickly is just say what is bathymetry, what are the other available data sources. Then I'm going to go on and tell you a bit about the BASE platform project, who's involved in it, where it's come from, what we're aiming to achieve, and then go on to the various products and services that we're generating from within the consortium. From there we'll go on, we've got a number of trial areas where we're generating data, and I'll describe these to you and tell you what's happening there. Going on to what for many of you is the important thing of how can you get the data, and then we'll open up the Q&A session. And what I suggest is, if any questions come to mind during the presentation, for those of you on YouTube following it online, you should have a chat channel popping up. Ask the questions during the presentation. Maite there is monitoring them, and then she'll bring them in at the end, so then we don't get that embarrassing silence at the end of the presentations when somebody plucks up courage to ask the first question. And if for any reason you haven't got the chat channel coming up, if you email the email address on the screen, that's also being monitored during the presentation. And it helps if you identify yourself and the organization you're working for as well, so that people know who you are. So, firstly, what is bathymetry? I mean, as most of you probably know, it's the depth of the underwater terrain. And slightly different from hydrography, which also includes things like tides and currents and so on. About 2/3 of the Earth's surface is covered with water, but 85 to 90% of it is unsurveyed to modern standards. So it might just be, even in coastal waters, a spot sounding every few miles that was done by an echo lead line, and in some cases, for example, Captain Cook's data from the 17th century is still used on data products today. So, as you know, quite a way to go compared to getting the level of data that we've got in land mapping. And just a quick look at the various applications. I mean, the obvious one is vessels, whether it's commercial shipping or fishing vessels or leisure vessels or whatever, not wanting to go aground, but starting from the top right and going around anti-clockwise on the coast, coastal modeling for tide surges, for tsunamis, is there coastal erosion or sedimentation happening? This is one of the drivers for one of our trial areas in Mauritius, where it's feeding into a tide modeling and tide surge and tsunami warning system. Then in terms of erosion and deposition, we've got some dredging going on here. So, for example, one of the areas is the Wannsee in the North Sea, where there's very mobile seabed, and the channels are always moving. And the ones for shipping going up to Hamburg and so on, the channels need to be kept open to a safe navigable depth. Fishing, both giving data to the fishermen who need depth data to decide where they're going to get a good catch, and also feeding bathymetry into habitat mapping so that those policing the fishermen can model sustainable fish stocks and so on. And obviously the depth of the seabed is important for any bottom feeding fish. Ports and harbours, tying into shipping again, but they have specific challenges because often there's a river where the port is bringing in a lot of sediment, which might cause silting up in the docks in the port and keeping the approaches to the port clear and so on. Then offshore energy, both oil and gas and renewables, obviously needs good bathymetry for the actual initial construction of the structures, but also for laying the pipelines and the underwater cables. And then in terms of monitoring them, so for example, you can get scouring around the monopiles for wind farms. You can get damage to the pipelines or to the power cables. And for example, a lot of the wind farms in the North Sea were done with the power lines just coming into a single hub, one power cable going to the shore, and about a 4-month repair turnaround time. So although the risk of damage to that cable is relatively low, I mean, the biggest risk is the cable getting exposed and a fishing trawl catching it. If it does get damaged, you're losing 1/3 of your power generated throughout the year. So feeding into quite a lot of different application areas. And then a quick overview of the established hydrographic survey methods. I mean, as I say, there's still quite a lot of lead line data around, but we'll bypass that because it's not in active use as far as I'm aware. So most of it's done acoustically with echo sounders, either single or multi-beam. A multi-beam gives the gold standard of full bottom coverage, often measured to a few centimeters accuracy, half-meter grid. Absolutely ideal, but very expensive. Ballpark figure for coastal surveys is about £3,000, euros, dollars, or much of a muchness now per square kilometre. So doing any large-scale surveying is a significant financial investment. Also, LiDARs become more accepted over the years, so this is putting a laser onto a plane and flying it over the area. Relatively shallow waters, but good for covering large areas. Though there's obviously quite a setup cost in equipping the plane, getting it to fly up over the area and so on, so not really ideal for small areas. But all of these give good accurate data, but pretty high cost in gathering it. And then looking at available bathymetry, starting from the top, GEBCO, well known by many for global bathymetry, that's free for use, but it's relatively low resolution. It's about 900 meters grid squares. Particularly in coastal waters, the detail is very low. Going on from there in Europe, we've got EMODnet, which is being run by DJ Mare in the EU. Gives much better resolution, about 230-meter grid squares, but there's still gaps where there's no survey data being made available to them, where they use GEBCO as the underlying bathymetry. And of course, it's limited to European waters. In the States, the NGDC have similar data sets available. Some other countries do as well. Then we come on to the National Hydrographic Offices, who may make available survey data. They're slowly releasing more of their survey data or nautical charts. But you must bear in mind these are generated for a specific service of safe navigation of ships. So they have a shoal bias. They'll preferentially show the shallower waters. They'll reduce the amount of bathymetry on the chart so that it can be used for navigation and it can show all the other features they need, like navigation buoys and so on. And some of them, depending on the policy of the Hydrographic Office, they may restrict access or they may charge for the data. And then we get commercial data providers who typically bring in data from multiple sources, package them up in a GIS-friendly format. Generally, it's good quality, high resolution and up to date, but it is commercial data as opposed to the free sources from GEBCO and EMODnet. So where do we fit in on this? Well, firstly, what is Base Platform? It's a 2-year project supported by the EU under their Horizon 2020 research program, and it's finishing in November this year. And the objective is to offer bathymetry to end users through a web portal, both where it's available for data for instant on-demand download, and also where people can put in a request for data to be generated specifically for an area where it's not already available on the portal. And we're combining a number of different sources of bathymetry. So we've got 3 types of satellite bathymetry. We've got optical, SAR and altimetry based, and we're also bringing crowdsourced bathymetry. Plus we're doing a lot on the tidal modeling so that we can bring everything down to a common datum, whether it's mean sea level or lowest astronomical tide or whatever the user needs. And you can see the website there, which is at the moment just a brief description of the project. Simon here will talk more about the portal and give you a quick preview of that when I finish talking. And the various partners in alphabetical order, we've got Deltares, who are with the glasses. If people stick their hands up, then when it comes to the questions, they know who they're talking to. So Deltares are doing the hydrodynamic modeling for tide levels and so on, and also combining data sets together. And they're from the Netherlands. We've got DLR, Stefan from Germany, who are doing the SAR-based satellite bathymetry. EOMAP from Germany again, who are doing the optical bathymetry. FindMaps from the UK doing the data portal. isardSAT here in Spain hosting us are doing the altimetry-based bathymetry. Maris from the Netherlands. Dick's helping us work on the business plan and making the project sustainable after the end of the EU funding. And then ourselves, SmartCom, we run the TeamServe crowdsourcing portal and bring in the crowdsourced bathymetry. And in a sentence, what we're doing is producing good data that's good enough for many applications. Better than free sources like eModNet and GEBCO, but significantly cheaper than commissioning a multi-beam survey vessel or LiDAR. It's probably not going to be as accurate, if you excuse the typing mistake, but it's good enough for many applications, and even if you need the higher resolution of a multi-beam survey, you can use our methods as a pre-survey tool so you can better define where you need to spend the really expensive resources and make best use of the money that you're going to be spending. So, quick overview of how they all fit together. If we look at this image on the left, this cross-section, we've got quite a lot of overlap of depth ranges. So offshore we've got the altimetry SDB, which really needs 2,000 meters seawater, so off the continental shelf. Crowdsourcing goes from about 1 meter up to 2,000 meters from the vessels. SAR from 10 to 70 meters, and optical from the high water mark to about 30 meters. So they all complement each other. We can get good overall combined coverage by bringing them all together. And also we can do things like we can use the crowdsourced bathymetry as input to the satellite sources to give them in situ data, which helps them refine their algorithms in an area and generate better quality data. Or if, for example, the optical doesn't cover a patch well because there's some heavy weed there and it doesn't get a good reflected signal, then the SAR data or the crowdsourced data may have some data that can come in and fill in the gaps and so on. So we have all these sources of bathymetry. We have the sea level data coming into the server, into the database, and we're also bringing in GEBCO and eModNet data for background bathymetry where we haven't got coverage. That goes through the portal and then out to you as users. And we're also feeding back low resolution data to eModNet. We're filling in a couple of their black holes around the Channel Islands and around the Balearics as part of the project. And just briefly, before we look in a little bit more detail at the different sources, at a very high level, the benefits of satellite data, fast turnaround, particularly if the images are already there. There's no need to task a satellite to take a specific image for you, and they can start generating the data pretty much straight away. No need to deploy a survey vessel, which is obviously significant cost and time getting the vessel there. In some hazardous areas, there can be a significant risk to the crew or to the vessel, so it avoids that. And also, depending where you're going, not so much down here in the Mediterranean, but up the top of Scotland, or for example, you can have a significant amount of downtime due to bad weather, so it avoids all of those. And as a result, it's a very cost-effective solution. And looking at the applications, altimetry SDB is really the only solution for covering large areas of deep water. The other methods are more geared towards coastal waters. But it's ideal for remote areas which other vessels can't get to easily. The data is good enough for areas that aren't critical for navigation of shipping. But then, as I say, it can be used as a pre-survey tool for those critical areas. And the crowdsourcing side, basically we gather data where vessels go. So a plus is we get data where the vessels are. A minus is if no vessels go there, we don't get any data. But there's about 10 million seagoing vessels globally, so potentially room for getting a large amount of data. Low-cost solution, we're using the sensors on the vessels. We just supply a low-cost data logger, or we get data from the tracks from the navigation system. And also, once set up in an area, it gives us a continuous resurvey. So when we've got vessels logging data, we can time slice that to get changes in the depth with time. So if it's an area where there's a mobile seabed, we can time slice it and pick up movements in the seabed. And some applications also, there's a benefit in getting community engagement and raised awareness of the marine environment. It doesn't apply everywhere, but it can get the mariners in an area involved. And a lot of the applications are the same. Non-critical areas or as a pre-survey tool. But as I say, with the continuous resurvey, we can pick up changes, and we can also feed in as ground truth to satellite and LiDAR bathymetry. So looking at the specific ones, firstly on the optical side, we've got EOMAP. They use a number of satellites, but very, very simplistically, they measure the change in colour as night goes down through the water and reflects off the seabed, and can cover depths up to about 30 meters. It depends on the nature of the seabed, because if it's a very non-reflective surface, it doesn't work in deeper waters, and also if there's a lot of mud and silt and so on in the water, again, the light doesn't get through. Spatial resolution between 2 and 15 meters. The lower resolution is when they're using some of the free satellite images, or if they use the commercial ones, they can go up to the higher resolution. And vertical accuracy, 0.5 meter plus or minus 10% of the depth, and generated on demand. So this is some of the data of the Mauritius trial area. Then the SAR data from DLR, they actually use two methods. The one you're seeing here in the image, it's using radar, so it goes through cloud, there's no problem with that. And here we can see on the black and white part, we can see the lines from the wave pattern. They measure the wavelength, and as you get into shallower waters, the wavelength shortens, and from that you can infer the depth. So although they don't need to worry about bottom reflectivity and clouds, they do need an area where there are waves. So, for example, the test case around the Balearics, there haven't been any images with waves, so they've not generated any data. Depths 10 to 70 meters, deeper than that, and there's no significant shortening of the wavelength. Spatial resolution about 100 meters, and vertical accuracy about 5 meters or better. The other technique they use is on the images you can easily pick up the border between the land and the sea. So if it's very shallow shelving seabed, that obviously changes quite significantly with the state of the tide. And if from the tide modelling, you know the tide state at a given time of image, it gives you a contour and you can generate a 3D view from that. So that's what they've been using around the Wadden Sea, for example. And then the altimetry based, it measures the surface of the sea. From that it infers changes in the gravity. Where there's a mountain underwater, you get a change in the gravitational field. And then from that they can infer changes in depth. But it needs to be deep water, 2,000 meters plus, and also at least 10 kilometers offshore, so the land isn't interfering with the data. About 1 kilometer spatial resolution and 100 meter vertical accuracy. And because it's combining data from lots of satellite passes, typically updated once a year. And then the cloud source data, you can see here from the tracks, it's very much where the vessels go. This is around the Channel Islands and Cherbourg in the English Channel. And covers depths from small craft up to 100 meters, ships up to about 2,000 meters, just limited by the power of the depth sounder fitted on the vessel. The spatial resolution, the way we process it, the the better and the more data we get in an area, the more we subdivide it to higher resolution data. So it's typically 32 meters. It can be better, it can be worse, depending on how the data builds up in an area. And vertical accuracy, at best between 0.2 and 0.8 meters, depending on tide and waves and so on, up to about 2.5% of depth. Again, with the proviso where there's enough data. So if we've just got one track, it's probably going to be less accurate. But we do daily updates, so we've got an automated system. A track gets uploaded. Within 24 hours, it's in the output data set. So going on from the bathymetry to the sea level modeling and the hydrodynamics, which is Deltari's work. They're running a global hydrodynamic model. It's a variable resolution grid, as you can see, as you get in towards coastal waters. It's a denser grid. It's about 5-kilometer grid. Vertical accuracy, 7 centimeters in deep water, 15 centimeters on the continental shelf, where the effect of the land makes things more variable, and the range of the tides is also greater. And they're generating this on a 10-minute time step. And here you can see the finer resolution grid as we come in towards Mauritius. And as well as being used to correct data such as ours from the crowdsourcing data and the water level side of the SAR stuff for tides, it also allows us to correct, to transform the data between mean sea level, lowest astronomical tide, ellipsoid, geoid, whatever vertical reference datum you want the data set to be output to. And then, as I said earlier, we merged the bathymetry, so I've just brought together some images from Mauritius showing how this works. So here we've got the optical bathymetry just close inshore around the island in the blue. So this is covering the shallowest water range. And the other end of the extreme, we've got the satellite altimetry with the dark blue here, just covering the deeper waters, and you can see it's shallow here, too shallow, and also we've got this buffer around the island where it gets too close. Then we can add in the SAR data, this grid up at the top, not extending quite right inshore, but providing a useful overlap between the optical and the altimetry. And then we've got the crowdsourced data. We've got tracks from a number of ships in the area. And you can see there's the main port here. And we've got most of the ships going in and out of the port. We've got, I could be kind to ourselves and say less. We've got nothing on the east side because there haven't been any vessels there. So it's what I'm saying about us getting data where it arises. But by merging all these, we can get a composite bathymetry data set that's a lot more useful to the end user than, oh, we do SAR bathymetry or we do crowdsourced bathymetry or whatever. So it gives the end user a much better product. Yes, this is the final one, overlaying them all together. The data portal, I'm just going to quickly skim over this because Simon's going to give a real live working demo, assuming all the technology behaves itself in a moment. But the idea is to make it very easy to acquire data, as a sort of one-stop shop, very easy to sketch out the area you want, and either download it immediately or place an order and then get a response as it gets updated and be told when it's available. So here it's sketching out an area on the screen. You're told for each of the different sources. Green is data that's available within the polygon. Yellow is available on demand, and red is areas where the data can't be generated. So, for example, it might be too deep or too shallow for a given technique. And then you can click on more details, and it'll tell you in more detail what's there. With this, all the data within the project is being made under an open data license, so you're free to download it and play with it, and Simon will talk to you a bit more about how to do that. But here you get the download, click on it, and you've got instant access to it. So coming on to the trial areas, we've been using 4 trial areas in the project so far for a number of reasons. Firstly, we're testing out the various technologies. We've each been doing various enhancements to the technologies that we're using within our given method. Also validating results against existing survey data in the area. But at least as important as the technical side is demonstrating the capability to partners in the area. Each one we've got a sort of lead partner that generated interest initially, but we're also going around talking to all the other data users in the area saying, this is what we're doing, could this be of interest to you, how can we tailor it for your needs, and so on. And the areas we've been using so far have been the Channel Islands in the English Channel, the Wadden Sea in the North Sea, then just off the coast of Barcelona here we've been using the Balearics in the Mediterranean, and we've been using Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. And we're potentially adding in a couple more areas in the rest of the project. So if that's of interest to any of you, please get in touch afterwards and we can discuss it and see if it's a suitable case for our needs. So running through them briefly, this is the Balearics. This maps a data availability map from eModNet, and these blue-grey areas, the pale areas, are where there's no data better than the GEBCO data. So there may be surveys, but they haven't been made available to eModNet. And we're working on filling in the blanks in that area for the Balearics. Then the Channel Islands, although they're part of the UK, they're sort of semi-independent, and they've fallen into a bit of a black hole between being surveyed by the MCA and having to do their own surveys. So again, surveys haven't been as up to date as we'd like, and there's quite a big black hole here that again is being filled in. Going out to Mauritius in the Indian Ocean, and here the lead partners, the Mauritius government, and Deltares are doing some work for them in any case on tidal modelling and tsunami warning and so on. And for that they need good bathymetry to generate the hydrodynamic model. So we're generating bathymetry that can be used both generally by the government and also to feed into Deltares' model of the area. And also the Wadden Sea, this is the entrance to the Elbe, very shallow, shifting sands, but going up to some large commercial ports. And here it's working with the German Inland Waterways Authority. My German's not up to trying to pronounce it. I'm sure Stefan will if you want the official German name of the organisation. And although the Wadden Sea runs from the top end of the Netherlands to quite a way up Denmark, the main driver is the German side, but you know, we're happy to cover the neighbouring areas as well. So those are the 4 trial areas in brief. At the moment on the website you'll see you can download data for them. I mean, this is very quick and simple means of accessing it. It's not been made particularly user-friendly, but if you're really keen to get the data now, you can. If you're not desperate to get it in the immediate term, we'll shortly have the portal up, which will be generating stuff in a much more user-friendly way and better data formats and so on. But as I say, all the data generated in the project, it's being made available under the Creative Commons Open Data License, so you're free to use it both for commercial and non-commercial activities, either in its own right or as a derived product. Within the portal you can select data, you can select a subset of the data in an area, you can select the output format and so on. So just keep you focused on the question and answers, and this will come up again after Simon's done his demo. Let's have plenty of discussion, because I think that's where a lot of the benefit of this workshop will come from. And also I'd like to follow up with you afterwards, so all of you who've registered, you can expect an email and probably setting up a face-to-face meeting or a phone call or whatever to get feedback from you and try to understand your needs better. And we also have an online questionnaire asking people for their requirements, and you can see the URL here. It's on the base platform website. And looking ahead a bit, we'll also be at Ocean Business. We'll be at the IHO Assembly in Monaco in April. For those in the UK, we'll be at the MCA Chaz seminar, and we'll also have a number of regional workshops where you'll be able to discuss things with us. But I'll hand you over to Simon now, and he'll show you the great stuff that's happening on the portal. We'll just sort of swap over seats so it's in front of the PC.
Thank you, Tim. Well, good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here and part of this amazing project. I'm sure one of the key questions you probably have in your mind is, I'd like to get hold of some of this great data. And as Tim was explaining, we'll be provisioning the trial data and the live data when the service goes live through a data portal. Now, at the moment, we have this in a prototype form, but we are very keen to sign up beta testers to this to get your feedback not only on the data products, but also how the portal works, how you interact with it, whether it delivers data in the formats that you want, in the quality that you want, and as quickly as you want. And not forgetting that this is going to be a commercial project with the prices that you're willing to pay. So following this presentation, in a couple of weeks, we will be contacting everyone who has registered to give them early access to the beta version of the site, through which you will be able to register your details, and you will be able to download the trial data as Tim's already described. The portal itself is a very simple, easy-to-use website, not requiring any particular software beyond a modern browser, but it goes through a traditional e-commerce type ordering process. You have a summary of the data types that you can order, and depending on your particular requirements, you may know what type of data you want, or you may want to be guided through that. The order process itself is very simple. You can either zoom into a location, or enter a coordinate, or indeed a location itself. I can upload a shapefile for my area of interest, or indeed I can simply just draw a box or a polygon to define it visually. Once I have done that, I can quickly get a summary of the data that is available. I can get an idea about the price for that data, more information about the resolution and accuracy associated with it, and looking at the licensing, we can decide to license it for 1 year, 2 years. Again, this is all initial ideas, but we are very keen to discuss that with everyone about their particular licensing requirements within their particular organization and within their application area. So you select your data. I'm interested in 2 products maybe, and I get the price summary here. I can put in a reference number for my particular project so I can bill it back to my customer, and then I can confirm that order and download it in a variety of formats, including NetCDF, ASCII, and as OGC web services. Again, if there are more formats that you're interested in, particular ways that you want to use this that we haven't anticipated, then we'll be very interested to hear that. All your orders will be available in your account dashboard, so you can see the transactions that you've already incurred. And if the transaction is one where it is an offline order, so it's not immediately available from our off-the-shelf databases, you will track it here, and when the particular provider who is delivering that data has that available for you, or indeed wants to give you a quote for it, they will update this system, and then you will get a notification about the price. You can accept the price, reject it, and then the order will be updated here. The system, very simple to use. We will explain the benefits, and this website will obviously be updated fully with all the information from partners about the individual products themselves, and it will be fully automated or guided. You'll be guided through it using a simple, easy-to-use user guide, but we don't anticipate huge complexities around ordering data. So as I said, the trial data will be available in this portal in a couple of weeks, and we will be contacting everyone who has registered for this workshop to give them early access to that. The only stipulation that we ask is that you give us feedback on the products and the portal going forward. But we are very keen to interact with the community around bathymetry to fully understand how we can best deliver data for you that meets your application areas and at a price that is appropriate. Thank you. I think I'll hand back to Bernat.
Okay. So now we had some questions from the audience. I'm trying just to organize them. But the first question would be, for instance, let me save it. So this is for Dick that you're taking about the business plan. Which customers and markets do you think are going to buy base products or are interested on our base products?
There's quite a range of organizations that might be interested in bathymetry. You can think of the offshore oil and gas industry, of course, who use it to plan pipelines or platforms and also for operations. You can think of dredging companies that have to make shipping channels and that work also for land exclamation and for also the oil and gas industry. We can think of renewable energy, that's an upcoming market. Let's say there's a lot of increase in renewable energy over the last years with wind farms and tidal energy. And they are also very interested in, of course, knowing for planning their wind farms and operations, what is the water depth locally. Then we can think of survey companies that in fact, they are providing, of course, for clients surveys, but they might be interested also to be being, let's say, a dealer or helping, or sorry, taking the data instead of, let's say, doing the survey itself. And also we can think of, let's say, other applications like harbors and ports and let's say, in all the governments that are running the harbors and the ports and they need a lot of information about the bathymetry. So there's quite a range of organizations, both in the commercial sector as well as in the public sector, that might be interested in bathymetry and that might have a look at this and see it as a very useful complementary products to their existing market and products that they're using.
Thank you, Dick. Then another question is that to Tim, you describe more or less the pros and cons of our project with regard to traditional survey campaigns. If you can just add something else, because some people are interested about this special topic, how to compare traditional survey methods with our proposal.
Compared to multi-beam survey, basically we're not competing. We're never going to produce the quality of data that a multi-beam survey can, just by the limitations of the technology. But not everybody needs that quality of data. And what we produce is significantly more cost-effective than a multi-beam survey. If you do need the quality of data from a multi-beam survey, you can use what we're doing as a free survey tool, so you can better define the area that you need to expend the expensive resources on and get more bang for your buck, get more data for the available money, or you might decide, well, we don't need to cover this whole area, we can just do that part there. And this particularly where, for example, you've got a mobile seabed and there may be a resurvey schedule, you can say, okay, we can use base platform data to do a pre-survey, find how much the channel has moved, and then better define where we need to employ the multi-beam survey. Also for the satellite methods, if you want to do something off, I don't know, the coast of Africa or somewhere else where it's very difficult to deploy a survey vessel, because there's no need to have a vessel in situ, it can all be done remotely. That's a significant advantage, both in terms of cost and speed of turnaround, and also in risk management. So there are a number of areas. We're not challenging the multi-beam market. We're adding tools to the hydrographer's tool chest, if you like, where we can complement what's already out there.
Okay. So another question. It's when base services are going to be available for customer evaluation? I'm going to answer that. So we have a process, as mentioned by Tim, that we are having some use cases right now at different trial zones, but we would like to have some early adopters as well, and we plan to open the platform around October this year, and customers, they can evaluate some data from their own area of interest after October. Of course, from this month, they will be able to test the trial areas with the service platform. Then another question, it's about prices. If we have a price list catalog for standard-based products, and if there could be a discount price for some early adopters. I think that, Dick, you could reply to that.
Yeah, I think we have two types of products. We have, let's say, off-the-shelf products, and they will be in the price list, in the catalog, and they will be available on the portal. And people can choose and order, and in fact have immediate delivery. While the other side, we have also upon request, is more customized, that people say, hey, do you have data? We have to look into this, so we have to make a quote. And then we can deliver, let's say, if the customer likes the quote, then we can deliver within, let's say, a time period of maybe a month. Upon, let's say, depending, of course, about the availability of the basic data that we need, the satellite data. At the same time, if we look at early adopters, because we are still developing the product and we are still developing the project, so we are very keen on early adopters, people that are interested in a certain area, and they say, I want to try it out. And then, of course, we really can do something with the prices, because it will be a win-win situation, that you help us to further develop the product according to your requirements, and it gives us the insight that we need to make a better product. So that's really an invitation to those of you who are listening and say, I'm interested in a certain area. Come forward using the links, and we'll talk to you and see what we can do and be competitive.
Okay, we have now several questions, so I should select some questions because otherwise we are not going to have time. But this is a question from the Civil Hydrography Manager from the UK Hydrography Office. There are several questions. One is if there is a level of accuracy given with each data set. That I think, Stefan, you can answer that.
So all the data sets that you can get will have, of course, a lot of metadata attached to it, and which will be like the resolution, or in terms of satellite images, also the acquisition time of the satellite image, and of course also the accuracy.
And then another question, it's that they are currently looking at different data capture methods in polar regions, such as Antarctica. This could be a trial area for our service platform. To Martin or myself. So Martin, if you want.
Yeah, it depends on the availability of depends upon the availability of satellite data in the area. So as we saw in the presentation, there's a number of different depth ranges where different techniques are applicable, and so we're dependent on satellite overpasses that are useful for the area. But within that, within those limits, we're definitely capable of delivering data there. Yes.
Can I also chip in there on the crowdsource side? We're probably going to have some vessels logging data off Greenland in the coming season. We've spoke to them towards the end of the last season. So we hope to have some areas there if that's of interest to you in the Arctic.
Okay, so new question. It's how often our products could be updated. So I think that this question is about if our products are outdated. So I think that it's one of the advantages of the satellite data. So I will propose you to answer this data.
Yeah. So that's a very relevant question because satellites, of course, with each year we have an increased capacities of different and further satellites. So that means that's one argument really where clients need actual data or most accurate data to go really for the most recent data sets that are available. And it depends, of course, on the client's demands, but that's what we even propose to clients while to define here these demands. And yeah, as I mentioned, that's possible to really act on these requirements with most actual data and even proposed.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Technical question. So it's how we are evaluating and validating our products according to accuracy and morphology, and how users do we think they can evaluate our products. So Stefan
or Martin maybe.
or Martin, if you want. Okay.
Yeah. During the data merger process, where the different forms of satellite data are merged, we also look at the discrepancies of the data and check them for consistency with the statistics that we heard. So we heard a number of statistics that the different sources can provide. So that will give you some idea of to what extent the data is consistent. Of course, we also would like everybody who's interested in the data to look at the data and come up with their own comparison for areas where they have partial surveying data available. We're very keen on getting feedback from you on what the quality of our products are.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Then some questions about the presentation. If the presentation is going to be available, I'm going to answer that. The presentation is going to be available, and we will contact each registered users, providing much more information, not just about the presentation, but how to find data samples, how to follow their own request. So everything is going to be uploaded in the website. Then a question from the University of Forest. I'm going just to read it. We are interested in knowing what are the possibilities of the different techniques, optical, SAR, altimetry, to also classify bottom types, such as rock versus sediment, and even final. This is a very technical question, so anyone is, Thomas, you can answer this for optical or?
Once more, please.
Okay. It's that they're interested in knowing what are the possibilities of the different techniques, optical, SAR, and altimetry and so on, to also classify bottom types, rock versus sediment, and even final.
Yes, that's indeed very complementary. That also we see in actual business already, that it is frequently requested to have the bottom information as well. And there are different methods. Of course, the optical method is mostly used, but even in the SAR method, there are further capacities to also increase knowledge about about this information. But it would be, I think, a good additional product. So as we see in the market, so we do this frequently, that we offer seafloor mapping in addition, and obstructions also is a case where SAR can contribute. So please let us know if there is such a demand, and we will discuss, of course, if we take this in addition as an additional product in the base platform. And I may just add to the question earlier between updated and off-the-shelf data. So the relevant part is here, the relevant message is that we, of course, have a certain off-the-shelf data available, which will grow, but it doesn't make sense to make directly a global off-the-shelf product because of the reason that the that the uncertainties and the accuracies will increase with time and the coverages, and that's why we would like to have this really user and demand driven, the increase of the off-the-shelf data then.
Okay, we had a question about that. So it's if you are apart from the standard products from the base project, if we will be able to customize and to provide upon request products improving accuracy or really customized products for some customers. This is a question to Martin, if you want, or to anyone.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. There's a number of options for customization. We will deliver through the portal, as Simon has shown, a number of formats, different certain resolutions, etc. Those we will standardize for ease of making a production channel. But if the user has different requirements in terms of projection, resolution, a special request in looking through also older archives of satellite data to look for data in a particularly difficult area, things like this, we can accommodate that with a separate quote. Those won't be available off the shelf, but we can accommodate that.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Then,
Okay, I have a question. Do you have intentions to make the data or data product available to the broad public, to the, let's say, to the leisure sailor? Our background is OpenCPN. We are representing OpenCPN, so there's a very big user community that might have an interest in that type of data, especially for areas that are not well surveyed.
Can I get that one?
can you repeat the question? Because
Yeah,
you don't
okay.
have a microphone.
The question is, will we make the data available to effectively to the mariner community? The person who asked the question is a user of OpenCPN, which is an open source chart plotting package that's used quite a lot in the leisure sector. From our point of view as TeamServe, where we rely on vessels to be contributing data, we make our data sets available to the mariner if they're contributing data to us. So specifically with OpenCPN, one of the plugins will record data in a format we can use. We're just finishing off automating outputting data in BSB and S57 format, both of which are supported by OpenCPN as well as by a number of other navigation packages. But for the wider base platform project, to be honest, that's not something we've got as far as discussing yet. But if there's interest, it's something that we can definitely look at.
Yes, especially the question about, as you cited, 10 million boats running around, that would be an interesting source as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, this people contributing will need an answer also what is happening with their products and how they can use the contribution they are giving. Yeah,
I mean, those 10 million vessels, I mean, our target is 1% rather than 100% take-up. But basically, they'd be contributing to the TeamServe portal, to the crowdsourced bathymetry that feeds into base platform. And our philosophy is for those vessels that are actively logging data as part of the payment, if you like, for giving us data, you get access to the bathymetry we generate. And that's free of charge, but we haven't discussed anything wider on that side within base platform yet.
Feel free to discuss with us.
Yeah.
Okay, following this question, I think that it was quite interesting. It's not just related to the crowdsourced bathymetry. The people say, if there are ways to contribute to the base project, this is the first question, and if this contribution could generate to these contributors some discount price for the base project products. So if we're dealing, how to deal with our providers, partners, and so on. It's a nice question, so big, a challenging question.
Yeah, it's quite challenging. I think it would be on a. Of course, we're interested to say to have a dialogue and to talk about opportunities and about possibilities to cooperate. I cannot give a straight answer, but it's more something that we should do, let's say, one-to-one and do case by case. And of course, we are interested in cooperation because that's one part, let's say, to build up a network, and through the network we can improve the quality of the products, and through that way we can, of course, have more users using those products. So if you have a specific ID, please bring it forward, and we'll look into it, and we'll contact you, and we'll talk further about this. Okay.
Okay. Then now a simple question, but how can customers could pay if they're interested in these products? I think this is a question to our e-commerce.
How can they pay?
No, e-commerce.
Okay, I was going to say that's not me.
As part
methods for payment.
Yeah, we'll have two primary methods for payment. It'll all be controlled through the e-commerce portal, but we are happy to say that we should be able to accept credit cards, and if the cost of the data is over an amount to be determined, but maybe 500 euros, for example, then we will be happy to invoice your organisation if it's an approved organisation as part of the facilities that we are providing. Yeah.
So thank you, Simon. Another, I would say, challenging question. It's you presented Tim about different open platforms such as Recentness, Geographical, and so on. Key question is, what is the added value of our base products compared to this platform? You already introduced that, but can you further explain that?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. Recentness and Geographical, they're both relatively low resolution products. And the data we're generating is basically of higher resolution. The other thing is that they're both DTM, so basically they both take all the survey data and generate a grid from it on whatever resolution their output data set is. So even if they get given higher resolution data than the output grids, that gets lost in generating the grid. Whereas we can provide products at variable resolution, so down to the 2-meter resolution of the optical bathymetry where that's being used upwards, so we can provide a higher detail data set, higher resolution. So it's a superior product from that point of view. Of course, the downside is it needs paying for rather than being a free data set.
Well, maybe I can add something, because very importantly in Recentness we have about say 40% coverage with survey data, and the other 60% we have no coverage. And that means that we are using, in fact, Geographical, which is derived from Bathymetry, to fill that gap. And I think with the base platform, we can provide a lot of new data, let's say, for those missing parts. And that's one of the very important elements between Recentness and base platform. The base platform can fill gaps, which are for areas where we do not have data yet. While Recentness will also make use of that, in fact, from the base platform. They can make use of the products from base platform to improve the Recentness map.
Anything else? No? So we are having a few questions about the depth and the spatial resolution of the products. So for crowdsourcing, for the other techniques. So I think that Stefan, could you remind people an overall about the spatial resolution and the depth that is that we're able to provide for each technique?
Okay, so basically, yes. So basically, it was covered in all the details in the slides in the presentation we just had. Basically, the resolution is the best the closer you are to the shore, so the more shallower the water is. So with the optical data, you can cover a range of up to 30 meters, and as we have heard, resolutions down to 2 meters or 15 meters. Coming next is the SAR data, which is usually a bit more off the coast, so from depths from about 10 to 70 meter, with a spatial resolution in the 100 meter range. And the next thing then is altimetry, which is very far from land for deeper waters without any depth limitations in this kind, and 1 kilometer resolution approximately. And of course we have the crowdsourced bathymetry laid all on top of this, which can bridge the gap from the shore to the beginning of the altimetry measurements, which is typically generated in a 32 meters grid.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. So now I need some time because I'm trying just to moderate and to give voice to the people that they didn't ask anything. So this is a question from the Lebanese Hydrographic Service. It's what kind of software we are using to acquire and process data in base platform project. I think this is requires a long answer, but you can make a summary, Thomas, for your case, or anyone, okay?
Yeah. So for each of these different technologies, of course, we have here the state-of-the-art software processors included. For example, for the optical data, we have fully physics-based methodology, so that's the actual cutting-edge state-of-the-art to really derive here both independent water depths and uncertainties. Then we have the SAR technology with the DLR processors to derive these capacities. The same with the altimeter, so the most actual technologies from isardSAT to improve with improved altimeter products, and of course then the actual modeling components from Deltare. So that means we have here combined indeed the best technologies that we at the moment can offer to cover this full range. There is, I think, if the question goes, be a direct forward to licensing, there of course these are independent providers, and then also we are it's a question to each of those providers if they also license software. For example, Deltare's software is of course very well known to the whole community. There are ways to use these software. The same with our processors, so we license them to countries and larger agencies. And for DLR there may be similar question, but that's then the question to each of those providers.
Yes, maybe I will add that we have some service level agreements, definitions, standards, that in these service level agreements we define our own conditions to use this software. So these are open, so we can send this to anyone. Now I just read, I think, a really challenging question. It's a legal question. How all these project base fit or sit with regards to the rights of nations to control data within their own specific zones? So I think that we got this question in previous stages. We're using satellite data from the space. This is the space law. Then we have every own. So how we are going to deal with that? Are we applying for these laws? No? How? So it's Thomas, anyone, because it's an open discussion.
Can I comment on the crowdsourced side of things? As SmartCom, we're part of the IHO's crowdsourced bathymetry working group, and they've been looking at this in quite a level of detail. And to summarize it, they're just about to produce what they call a cookbook, which is looking at crowdsourced bathymetry. But basically, their interpretation of the crowdsourcing angle is that vessels are gathering data as they go about their normal activity rather than a planned survey, and also the data is being used for the common good. So they're aiming to get all their hydrographic office members to approve of gathering data for crowdsourced bathymetry. Those we've spoken to already, most of them are perfectly happy to allow us to proceed in their waters. There's one or two, like Sweden, for example, who have fairly conservative laws on who can hold any bathymetry data. But generally the consensus is that there's not an issue on the crowdsourcing side.
I may add for the optical satellite imagery. So we are aware and know that some countries have of course regulations where the bathymetry, especially the high resolution shallow water bathymetry, is a topic of the safety, and in these countries not provided for free, but from the satellite product. So there is a different perspective. So there are certain satellite resources which have legal restrictions for certain countries, but this doesn't apply for all satellite data. That means we as service provider are finally free, of course, in the decision to use any satellites over the whole globe. That means if we are contracted to generate such data, yes, we do so. Yeah. Of course, respecting the regulations for the single satellite providers and data, but we are not dependent, of course, on different national laws here in that sense.
Okay. Sorry, because maybe the microphone was not working very well, and I was not very close. So now I had another microphone. So a question from Surfing Forecast website with hundreds of regular users. This is from the chat. If it will be possible to access high-resolution bathymetry data, and the second question is how often this data is going to be updated. About how we already answered some part of the question, but how often maybe you can answer, Thomas or Stefan or anyone. You? Okay, yeah. Thomas. Okay.
So that's a question of the business case. So in reality, we at the moment see that certain regions in the world, of course, are requested, and then we have certain regions where we generated several updates. So that means when comes a new request or higher resolution request, then we update the products, and here it will be the same. So it is essentially demand driven by the user community, how frequently this is updated, because there must be, of course, a financing these updates somewhere from. So that's just demand driven.
Shall I come in at the other end? Because there's a spectrum between all the different participants here, and we're at the other end to EOMAP because we've got a fully automated system. Basically, if a user uploads a track, it's in the output data set within 24 hours. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it will be in the base platform output data set because it needs to go through additional processing and merging of data. But I think depending on the source data, there'll be different update rates for the different data sources.
Thank you, Tim. So another question. It's a very pragmatic question. How long does it take to process an order from the platform? This is to you, Simon. And if today I would like to sign into the platform, what should I do? You mentioned some steps that you can remind to potential users.
Yes, as I said earlier, we will be contacting all registered participants of the workshop with sign-up details within the next couple of weeks. With those details, you'll be given a link to the prototype system, and you'll be able to sign up and register and download the trial data and get the first experience of the ordering process. Just to the first question, in terms of once we go live, off-the-shelf data should be pretty much orderable immediately via the platform. So you'll make your selection, you'll make your requirements selection through the portal in terms of data formats, but then that should be available immediately for off-the-shelf products. For offline orders, then there will be a process that we will have to go through in terms of contacting the providers concerned, but they will keep you fully informed of the progress of your order in terms of quoting and acceptance and the actual processing that is required. But typically we expect that process to be of the order of a month or so, but that remains to be seen and confirmed.
Yeah, I think The exception there is the crowdsourcing, because if it's an area where we don't have any vessels logging data, it takes us a significant amount of time to go out and recruit vessels and to get a significant amount of data. So they were typically talking 3 or 4 months before we can provide anything meaningful. Whereas the satellite people, particularly if there's off-the-shelf satellite images, it can be a much faster turnaround than that.
Thomas?
Yeah. Yeah, just to add, of course, it depends on the source that is requested here, and then for the optical satellites, it's for the most actual data. That means for new acquisitions and data, it is between just 1 day and depending on the size, of course. If these are hundreds, thousands of square kilometers, then it may be a few days up to a few months, depending on the size.
Yes, for the case of the altimetry deep water products, I think between 2 weeks and 1 month we can build a product from last month. Okay, so there are another questions, but I would like just as well, if we can summarize in a way, because the intention of the workshop was not to be a very long workshop. People are just sending messages that they have to leave, some of them. So, Dick, can you summarize which are the next steps that we are going to do with the people that are interested on evaluating, buying, playing with our products and with our services?
Okay. You have to understand the base platform is right now a project, so we are in the middle of the development, and we are planning, let's say, to go really live and commercial and operational at the end of the year. But in the meantime, we have a pilot phase where we want to get into contact with our users. So all of you who are have registered to this meeting will be followed up. So it means we take contact with you. We invite you to try out the pilot service, try out also the products, give us your feedback. And also if you have specific questions or specific demands, let's say, bring them over to us, because then we can have a one-to-one conversation with you, and we try to follow up, and this way we can further develop the services, and also we can have this win-win situation that we are building up the network with you and the communication, and also then further developments will then also be communicated to you. If you have also other colleagues or other, let's say, people in the business that you say they might be interested, bring them over to us, and then we'll add them to the mailing list. And then we'll keep them also informed and in the loop for the pilot testing and the tryout of the products.
So, thank you very much. Do you have any other comment that you would like to add? No? From the audience here? No?
Thank the audience.
So I would like first to thank all the online users that patiently you have been suffering some little problems with the chats and connections. Then thanks very much to European Commission to fund this project, to all our team members that I think that we have created really a high value new products and services. Thank you to all people that are here in this room and come to this workshop, and I hope that we can just contact you very soon and we can start really individual one-to-one relationships that you can test and play with your products. We are willing, of course, to have your requirements, so we hope that this is just the start of a long-term relationship. Thank you to all of you.